if people are not familiar with you, I mean, most people in the crypto space are familiar with you. You have a lot of clout in the space. Why Wyoming? Why is Wyoming the trailblazer for cryptocurrency regulation? Why is it the most friendly state? What is it about Wyoming that makes it so different from all the other states within the US?
Well, Wyoming, if we talk a little bit about the culture, Wyoming has a history of bucking the system. In fact, the motto of the University of Wyoming is bucking the system since 1886. And so that tells you a lot culturally. We're innovators. We're not, folks who are trained to think within the four corners of existing philosophy. We actually buck the system. And we've done some really cool things in Wyoming. We were the first state to give women the right to vote. And Congress actually said, you can't become a state unless you withdraw women's right to vote. And they said, nope, thanks, then we won't become a state. And eventually, of course, we did. But we also invented the limited liability company, which is a business organization form that a lot of your listeners probably use. That was invented in 1977. Wyoming's the one that created that. So we have a history of being first. We have a history of doing what's right. And I think we also have a general philosophy of, as Trace Mayer likes to say, good fences make good neighbors. We've got very clear property rights, and we value the concept of self custody, if you will, self-control, rugged individualism of our own destiny. And it fits culturally with Wyoming. Lastly, I would say Wyoming's one of those no income tax states. There's no state income tax here. And we actually passed one of the bills in 2018 was to clarify that there's also no property tax at the state level on crypto assets. So it's very tax friendly here as well.
Okay. That's wonderful. I had a personal question to ask you. Rick, did you want to say something?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was jumping out of my seat. When Sushi mentioned taxes, I was like, whoa, that's really awesome. That was the one thing is probably better for later in the episode, but I noticed in some of your writings, you talked about how the crypto in Wyoming is classified as personal property, and it falls under personal property. Are personal property taxes cheaper than capital gains taxes? Because other places say, well, if you sell it, you got to pay capital gains tax, or is there some advantage to that?
Yeah, obviously I can't give tax advice here, but just in general, the IRS is the one that gets you on the capital gains taxes. A lot of states also charge capital gains taxes, and basically if an asset is considered property, then generally speaking, you're paying capital gains taxes when you sell it. So what we clarified is that not only is crypto property, but it also is exempt from sales taxes in Wyoming because of the way we defined it. So really, you're not going to have the Wyoming taxman coming after you if you're in the state of Wyoming. The IRS is different, but at a state level, a lot of us pay. I lived in New York City for a long time. I paid 3 levels of taxes: federal, state, and city. You don't have the state and city taxes in Wyoming generally. There are some fees, to set up your LLC, obviously to cover the Secretary of State's costs. But even then, they're pretty small. Candidly, I've said to a lot of businesses that the instinct is go set up your business in Delaware. Well, go look at your Delaware franchise taxes and tell me whether it's really in your interest to set up your business in Delaware. It's a lot cheaper to do in Wyoming. And by the way, it might surprise your listeners, Wyoming's number 2 behind Delaware in terms of new business entity formations because of that history of setting up LLCs.
Okay. I have a follow-up question to that. So in your recent Forbes article, it was how can individuals benefit from the Wyoming blockchain laws? You talk about, you can keep your digital assets within a Wyoming company, or if it's in the state of Wyoming, it's free from certain level of taxation. And then we talked about the money transmitter law. So personally for me, this whole idea of like-kind exchanges for the past couple of years, in other states, you have to pay to swap from crypto to crypto at the end of the year. My accountant says that. And it seems like Wyoming is kind of progressing forward with this money transmitter law. So can you go into more detail about what this law means for the everyday crypto hodler or institutional investor?
Yeah, at a basic level, what we've done is say, look, Wyoming, crypto is property in Wyoming, and so if it's stolen, then it's theft. So the property theft laws apply. But more importantly, for commercial transactions, what happens is that the rights and obligations of the parties are very clearly defined under law, so that if there's a dispute, then judges have a roadmap for how to handle it. Now, you may think, gosh, this is a peer-to-peer market. Why do we want the legal system involved at all? And that's a very, very good question. And again, I like to invoke Trace Mayer's thought about this, which is technology's got to be backward compatible with the legal system. It really cannot exist in a vacuum, because the legal system, none of us live in places where there's no law, right? Unless you live on a seastead or something like that, right? Then where you've got a blank slate and the code can literally be law. We want the code to be able to execute law that is recognized as valid. And so we've got to make the tech backwards compatible with the law by having the law catch up to the tech. And that's what Wyoming has done. No other state has done that. It's very basic protocol level stuff. I use the phrase protocol level in the sense that, that the commercial law is the base layer of the legal system. It gets at the very basics of things all of us do every day, which is our commercial transactions. What are the rights and obligations of parties? And believe it or not, a crypto transaction is considered a commercial transaction, and you want it to be recognized by the law so that, let's say, for example, we've got a very active coin lending market that's just really exploded in size in the last couple of years. Well, how do you lend coins? You can't really do that on a blockchain, right? So that's happening off the blockchain. So now you actually then have to create a contract between the two parties explaining, how that collateral that is pledged for the loan is going to be recognized legally. And what Wyoming has done is very clearly define how you can do that, so that you can get liquidity for your assets if you want to pledge them as collateral for a loan. We've also defined how, if you want to custody it with a third party, so all the exchanges and the crypto custodians that are popping up, I'm a not your keys, not your coins kind of person, but I also recognize that there are institutional investors that we would love to have investing in this industry. That's how we're going to help fix Wall Street. So how do we actually have the securities that are issued on blockchains be able to be custodied by a third party without creating a counterparty exposure? Why can't I make my financial institution just like my valet parking garage or my coat check, where when I deposit my property with that entity, they don't legally own it, I still own it, and I've just given them temporary possession of it. And so they're just providing me a service for which I pay. But if they go bankrupt, I don't get caught in their bankruptcy. These are very simple but very critical insights, and the only state that has recognized this is the state of Wyoming. I would also say we did something also kind of weird that the developers probably would consider weird. It's not weird from a legal perspective, but how do you define the location of bits of data? You can't, right? So one of the problems that the law has been struggling with is, how do you know which law applies when data is literally, moving all around the world? And so we actually defined that you can locate your digital asset in the state of Wyoming if your hardware's here, if you've deposited it in a Wyoming custodian, or if you are actually a Wyoming person, and person under the law includes business entities that are Wyoming entities. So you actually can get the benefit of Wyoming law. I can't give legal advice to your personal situation, but you get the benefit of Wyoming law pretty expansively. And this was all designed to help, advance the crypto industry broadly. We are neutral, incidentally, to any type of crypto. Our laws are written to expansively include all.
Okay. That was a great answer. Great answer.
Yeah.
Moving back to Wyoming and legislation there, I read there are a couple other states that seem to be starting to get the ball rolling. Are there any other legislators in other states that are reaching out to you and either white labeling what you've done in Wyoming, or looking at you as inspiration to start progressing regulation forward in their states?
Oh yeah, we've had 12 other states enact various versions of Wyoming's 13 laws. No other state's going to do all 13, right? Because Wyoming's grabbed the first mover advantage. So other states aren't going to do, the whole thing. But I call it the Rocky Mountain arc of states. This is truly becoming the crypto haven of the United States. It's, the Rocky Mountains are becoming the Swiss Alps for like Zug. And it's Montana, Wyoming, of course, and Colorado and Utah that have actually enacted significant legislation that recognizes the crypto industry. I'd still say, again, Wyoming's far ahead. And we also have the added advantage of the tax regime that I already talked about. And then we also respect privacy. Wyoming doesn't require LLC registrants to disclose who owns the assets in the state of Wyoming. So therefore, you can actually protect your privacy by owning these assets through Wyoming LLCs. So there are clear advantages in Wyoming outside of just the crypto laws that we recognized. But it's the Rocky Mountain states that are doing it. So don't be shocked if this sort of northeastern Colorado, including Denver, all the way up to southeastern Wyoming, becomes the mecca in the next 10 years of this industry. And I can say, I estimate there's about $20 billion worth of crypto custodians that are lining up to come to the state of Wyoming, and they can apply for their licenses as of October 1st. And so this time next year, I think we'll have about 20 billion. And if those 20 billion come in to Wyoming, there's going to be a big coattail effect, and others I think will follow.
Okay. That's fantastic. Are there companies, just for example, like Bittrex or Binance or Gemini or any of those major companies, if they wanted to rehome their center in Wyoming, they could do that and benefit from your laws that are advantageous?
Yeah, I don't think I'm giving anything away because Kraken's been pretty public about their interest in Wyoming. They've been at our last several blockchain task force meetings, and they are, along with IOHK, a big sponsor of WYO Hackathon. So in addition to meeting Charles and Jeremy, you can come out and meet the Kraken folks, including Jesse as well, at WYO Hackathon.
Okay, that's fantastic. And Philippe, I wanted to refer to an article for the sake of the viewers. Yes. We're going to link it down below. Caitlin is a senior contributor at Forbes, and we'll put the link down below where she refers to the 13 laws that Wyoming has enacted. And there's a quick summary on there that I'll touch on briefly. This is from Caitlin. This is a summary on the Forbes article where Wyoming recognizes direct property rights. So this is a summary of those 13 laws. Wyoming recognizes direct property rights for individual owners of digital assets of all types, virtual currencies, digital securities, and utility tokens, and applies the super negotiability rules of commercial law to virtual currencies. And there's more information on that. Wyoming also creates a fintech sandbox to provide regulatory relief to financial innovators from existing laws for up to 3 years. It is broadly reciprocal with fintech sandboxes both in the US and globally. There's a few more points on there. The next one is the Wyoming laws authorize a new type of state chartered depository, which you kind of referred to earlier, as depository institution to provide basic banking services to blockchain and other businesses. And the fourth point and last point I'll make here is it authorizes the first true qualified custodian for digital assets, which is a bank. Wyoming banks can start such operations as soon as September 1st, 2019. And we'll link that down below.
September, it's October 1st.
Okay. October 1st.
Yeah. Okay. October 1st. Yep.
So
That's
1st.
when the application's open. It takes about 6 to 9 months to go through an application process to charter a new bank. So I just want to manage expectations. That's why I'm talking about this time next year. These folks will be here and up and running because it is going to take time, unfortunately. But yeah, we're doing it as fast as we can.